paralyzed by fear. I'm clutching you so tight, afraid to lose. I retreat more each night. Where is my voice? I've muted myself, and in my shyness, it's you I repel. I will find my way to express my voice. I must find my way to ignite my spark. Find my way to me, so we can be we. Find my way. The fractures between us rise into view. I cling to the scraps of the care that falls through. Where is my strength? I've crumbled apart, hiding from the truth. I've shattered my heart, but I will find my way to regain my strength. I must find my way to restore my will. Find a way to me, so we can be we. Find my way. Here is this moment to take a chance, to go on alone or grow and advance. I will find my way to express my voice. I must find my way to ignite my spark. Find my way to me, so we can be we. Find my way. I will find my way to regain my strength. I must find my way to restore my will. Find my way to me, so we can be we. Find my way. Find my way. I'll find my way.
Happy Sunday, everybody. Thank you for finding your way to Sunday Live with me, Caleb. I'm coming to you from Seattle, Washington, in the United States. And every week from 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific time, I bring you a new artist, a new musician. And this week, we are bringing you both. We're going to talk about art, music, and software today. And we have, I'm trying to have a guest once a month from the company I run, UNI Software, to come on the show and talk about what they've done with the software over the years and tie that back in with all the arts and music that I'm showing on the other episodes during the month. That's the show. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, we do have an open chat room. This gets restreamed on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And yeah, UNI Software. UNI Software, about 2.5 years ago, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who said, hey, can you help me reboot my software company? And that's what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years. It largely is the product Artmatic, which is mainly a visual product, and metasynth, which is mainly an audio product, but both of them blur the lines between audio and visuals and math and drawing and really cool, crazy software. You should check it out, uisoftware.com. And we have, I'm jumping ahead of myself to the guess. I got to find out what's going on with Joe down in California. Hold on a moment. Hey, Joe, you out there?
Yes, I am. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Very well, and mostly dry. It had started to rain not too long ago, about maybe 30 minutes ago. It started coming down, and here in the Berkeley Hills of Northern California, it's now wet. After visiting old coworkers in the Sausalito Headlands, where it was windy, blustery, cold, overcast, but dry, I got home in the nick of time, and now I'm here in front of you instead of being drenched by rain clouds. So it's good to be here.
Cool. Yesterday we did one more round of cross country skiing, which was awesome. It is nice. We had 4 straight days of sunshine, and it got up to a balmy 50 degrees. So we were a little concerned the snow might be gone. So we rushed out and did some cross country skiing yesterday. And it looks like we're gonna maybe the snow's going to hold a little longer. And then today it is back to overcast and rain, which is the standard MO of the Seattle area.
I'm curious as to when you go cross country skiing in the snow, if you do it in the sunlight, is there a snow blindness you have to contend with?
I got some reflective goggles because of course we're all out there wearing masks. So I wear glasses, and my driving glasses have like was that kind of tinting thing where it it goes dark. They turn into sunglasses in the light. So I was wearing those, but the problem was the mask fogs up the inside of the glasses, and then you can't see. So I got some nice big goggles, anti-fogging, anti-glare, and had no problem. But yeah, I mean, if you're out there, especially cross country skiing, because I'm typically looking down because I'm trying to make sure I'm keeping. I'm still a novice, trying to keep my skis in the track, and so yeah, you want to have some eyewear when you're doing that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's sounds a lot more problematic in terms of, well, not problematic, say adventuresome. Mine was just my times have been just running around on a motorcycle at night. I'm currently house sitting in Montclair, but I'm coming to you from the Berkeley Hills, Montclair being another section of Oakland in the hills. Both places have fantastic, glorious views of the bay. But because of the distance from between here and then work in Montclair, I haven't been able to get my regular cycling in. So I've been relegated to the motorcycle and more often the four-wheel vehicle. So,
Got it.
so
It's funny because relocating from California to Seattle, you have to rethink everything. And last winter, we still had our sedan, and I still had my sports car, and everything's a hill or a valley filled with water here. And when it gets cold, things get icy. And I did a little bit of little unexpected drifting in my sports car, and my wife did a little unexpected sliding through stop sign intersections, and we were like, yeah, that's why everybody has a four-wheel drive here. So I can't imagine motorcycling around here.
no, no. I've seen Seattle police officers, motorcycle officers with, they have handlebar extensions, their mittens that keep their arms and their hands very warm, fur lined. But I don't know how I'd be able to do it. It's all I can do to get away with it here in the winter time.
Now, and when you're talking about wintertime, you're talking about maybe what it might get icy sometimes, but you're still talking 50s and 40s.
Well, but yes, but also rain. This just the fact that the roads are slick with rain. You have to be a lot smoother. I remember a very long time ago riding through Black Butte Summit between the Bay Area and Vancouver, Washington, and it was in February. I crossed Black Butte Summit on I-5 on a motorcycle. They had plowed the day before, and there was snow everywhere and ice on the roads. And at 50 miles an hour, I tiptoed right through Black Butte Summit on the motorbike.
Hmm.
I don't know that I'd ever do that again, but I'm glad to have survived.
Well, we made the decision. We're like, okay, last year, we're like, okay, after these experiences, we're getting four-wheel drives, four-wheel drive cross. What are they calling me? They're calling them cross something. I keep wanting to call it
Crossovers,
crossover. You know,
crossover
it's not a
SUVs.
yeah, it's not a station wagon. It's not an SUV. It's not a. sedan, and that's been perfect. It's kind of trippy because all four wheels are doing their own thing, and it's like being in a computer, man. Between the screen and it projects the speed that I'm going uh, at the window, so it looks like it's standing on your hood, the number
Hmm.
of what you're doing, and for for several times I got in the car, I couldn't get it to start. I'm like, what button am I supposed to be pushing in what order? Computer, start the car.
Even I have four-wheel drive in my crossover, but I'm always feeling the car I'm driving. I always feel as though I'm late for soccer practice.
You have a Subaru or
That was a
Volvo?
2003 Saturn View, but the
Okay,
four-wheel drive kind with the regular transmission that doesn't break down. So I lucked out.
very cool, very cool. Well, speaking of technology, today we're going to be talking a fair about some software use. Um, Our guest today has used the software for the software company that I took over running 2.5 years ago for several decades, and we're going to see some of his early work in those two programs that I mentioned earlier. So have your tech hats on, folks. But also, I want to say, have your ears open. Today's going to be a little more challenging musically than some of the pop rock stuff I've been playing. You may need to adjust your volume occasionally during the show. There is a couple pieces that are louder than others. But I think it's a worthy journey to really stretch yourself creatively and listen to different types of music and look at different types of art. And today is the episode for that. So without further ado, I would like to bring on our guest of the week, Gary Lee Nelson. Gary is an artist, composer, and musician, and he's coming to us from Santa Fe. Hey, Gary, you out there?
Yes, I am.
Welcome to Sunday Live. Thank you for agreeing to be on the show.
Mhm.
And so, Gary, how did you first come across Eric's software?
Um, I was teaching a summer workshop at Oberlin College, where I taught for 35 years in the Conservatory of Music. And it was a 2-week thing, and we had a mixture of students that were some high school students, some college students from other colleges, and some older folks. And there was a fellow that came in, and he had, I think it was metasynth, and I had never seen it before. And he was out in front of Gibson's ice cream store, and he was tracing these cracks in the sidewalk, and then bringing them back as a JPEG and running them through metasynth and making these very interesting kinds of sounds. So that was my first look at it. I started using that, and then I had got the whole suite. And this was still back in the 90s, I think. Midnight. I don't know when did metasynth first come out. I
I
don't
think
even know that.
98. I could be wrong. I
Okay, so
think
it was
it's
later
98,
than I
99.
thought, but I started using the UNI software in early 2000. My wife at the time was an artist, and we started making films, and we made a bunch of them, about two a year, that made the rounds of film festivals, won some prizes, things like that. But she largely did the visual things, although I taught her Artmatic and that sort of thing, and I largely did the soundtracks, but we kind of overlapped. She had some musical training, I have some art training. So that, and then I've used it off and on since then as part of a suite of software I use from other companies. I use Max MSP. I use I can't remember this name right now. It's named after a famous dancer. Who was that famous dancer, freeform dancer? Um, it's a graphic software, basically, for mostly for theater, the way it's laid out, and then all kinds of other things. I write a lot of my own software too. Less and less now as as software in general catches up with the things that I wanted to do. Early days, I wrote almost all of my own software,
Wow.
and, MIDI drivers even, and things like that.
I think outside of Eric, you're the only other person I've met who has programmed software as an expression of their artwork.
Yeah. Well, I won't mention all the early software. I've been doing this since the 1960s, actually. I was working in Holland, and I took some courses at the Institute of Sonology in Utrecht and got introduced to uh, mostly to analog tape stuff, but I did some computer pieces as well. And then when I came back to the States, that was my thrust for the rest of my career through graduate school and several other places of teaching before I went to Oberlin. And I was hired at Oberlin to kind of rebuild a program that had been started in the late '60s, but had for various reasons was fallow at the point, and build it up to over 30 years. We have a major. One of the electronic music magazines designated us or identified us as the best place to study music technology at the undergraduate level.
Wow.
And we use that software, use your software throughout as I say, in part of a collection of software that we use. My center is kind of around Max, but I've done a lot with C Sound and with Super Collider, and I basically pick the software for its ability to do a particular task that I'm working on. So I'll sometimes not go near something for 6 months or a year, and then suddenly time to make a film or do something like that, and I do that.
Well, I'm going to show an example of some of your work here. This is Le Chat Rouge. And then when we come back, I'd like to hear how you applied your background to creating this piece.
Okay.
That was Le Chat Rouge by Gary Lee Nelson. Um, so before we talk about how that was produced, I wanted to talk a bit about 20th century music and um, the whole generations of artists who were trying to react or respond to the, classical romantic period of very metered music. And I certainly was influenced by John Cage when I was in high school, and I would play these piano pieces that had my father yelling at me, "What are you doing in there?" So what is your background on abstract music and thoughts about meter?
Well, I'm a traditionally trained composer. I started writing music in high school, um, and so I was exposed to the whole range of music history, mostly Western European, as it was in those days. I was always looking for something different. I don't know if I can really speak to exactly what you're doing because I just feel like my career is now 60 years. I've gone through. I know John Cage or knew John Cage. I was influenced by Stockhausen, who did some pretty interesting rhythmic things. It's one of those things. People these days say, "Well, who's your favorite composer?" Well, what's your criteria? What's your favorite kind of music? Well, what? And they want you to come up with a single answer, and the world, gratefully, is not that simple. I tell people I dislike only two kinds of music: loud and dumb. If it's music that doesn't have any imagination, it doesn't interest me. If it's too loud, my hearing at 80 is almost perfect because I've protected it all those years. I saw this hearing loss thing coming early on. Um, so I'm not sure that I can do that. I'd rather talk about what you just saw. By the way, I couldn't see it or hear it. Um, so this is from a series of generative digital images, and there's a particular aesthetic behind that. Um, by the way, these are not early works. These that whole set is about 3 years old, and specifically the way I used Artmatic. Well, the story behind this is I moved to Santa Fe and I joined an organization called Artmatic, and they had critique sessions. They gave each artist 5 minutes. Well, I don't think I have a film that is less than 5 minutes. So I couldn't even show it, let alone discuss it. And so I backed off and said, well, how can I be included in this? And I realized that Artmatic keyframes are actually 16 canvases. And so I developed this, it's called generative art, where each image, the content of an image is mutated in some way and becomes the next thing. And I liken it to DNA. And so I say the first image that I make, and I have a seed image. So in that one, it's a simple line drawing of a cat. And then that gets, I make a function tree, the function trees that come in Artmatic. And then I start noodling with it until I get something I like. And when I get something I like, that's the mother of the next image. And then I speak at it, try to be a feminist here, and I talk about daughters. And so I work through 16 images. And then to present them to the Artmatic people, I print them on aluminum. I export them as very high resolution TIFFs. I send to a place in Brooklyn called Illuminize, and they send them back to me. They're beautiful. I've had shows and sold a few in Santa Fe. But each of them, there's 16 because there are only 16 frames available in Artmatic still. I think I saw in the new version. And I've always been interested in art. In high school I had to choose between art and music. You couldn't do both. And so this is a set of things to investigate this idea of generative art, which is really quite an old thing, but it's come to the fore when you can compare it to DNA. So the numbers that represent where the sliders are in this function tree are the parts of DNA, and when you hit the dice and move them all a little bit, you've mutated the genome. The soundtracks for these were actually made with a software that I've been working on for some time called Sonomorphs, and it's a simple or similar idea to what I described about the images, only with sound. And so it's we used to call it algorithmic composition. And the connection between the images and the sound in here is purely subjective. After I made the images and made a page, the page is very tedious to go through and see everything. So I thought I'll make a slideshow, and then I'll write a soundtrack for it because it should have a soundtrack. And so then I made a YouTube playlist where I think there's 16 of them now, that they're all there and you can just go through them, and they're only 2 minutes long. So what is that? That's a half an hour if you stick around for all of them. And each one of them has a subject. I think you're going to show the teardrops, remember the Charlie Hebdo disaster in Paris, where some publishers were killed because they violated Muslim doctrine. And so I created several series with this, and one was called Teardrops, and both of them started with a seed image that was simply an eye with a teardrop coming down it, and they would be warped and stretched and twisted and so forth, and then aesthetically, I applied my aesthetic, so entirely subjective. Yeah, I like that one, I'll keep it. I don't like that one for some reason, I will get rid of it. And that describes the whole series, which for short I call it EDI, evolutionary, or no, GDI, generative digital images, meaning that the first images plays a large part in making the second one. I don't know if people are all familiar with Artmatic, but there's a place where you can press an outline of a tree, and it'll give you about 30 suggestions for what the next frame might be. So I use that sometimes. And using that method is, in fact, generative art. So that's my answer to that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's show it, folks, another example. This is Rings of Fire. That was Rings of Fire by Gary Lee Nelson. I've been trying to get my mom to take her abstract art into Artmatic. And so this is, I know you're out there watching, Mom. This is your episode to to prod you into getting a scanner and putting, take a picture of them on your phone or whatnot, and then I can show you what to do from there. All right, that's my prod. So so you're doing this generative art in Artmatic and creating these individual images, and then you're compiling that, and then are you composing the music to the image, or does the composition happen independently?
Well, just by design, these are not really meant to be shown in a theater or something on broadcast. They're meant to be an easier way to look at the sets, the sets of 16 images. And well, I won't describe my sonomorphs except to say that it is a similar approach to sound as Artmatic has to vision. And the main difference between these two we've just seen is that the seed image is different. Artmatic let me choose different color palettes and design them myself. There are is that what they're called? Function trees? I can't remember what the term is.
Component trees, function trees.
Yeah, it's a series. So the simplest one would be a box with the picture in it, and then down below that there are a series of sliders that let you hit sideways, up and down. A couple of other things, maybe rotator, or maybe that's another box. But you string all these functional boxes together, And the way I do it, I usually start with one of the ones that there are dozens available structures, and I modify it. And then once I've got the structure doing what I want it to do, and I've got the seed image, then I begin to do the assembly of the 16 images. And so at that point, it's very technical on one side, and I always visualize what I'm doing as here's this technical stuff coming, and very precise, and here's this other side coming that is subjective and taste driven and hard to define, and boom, and they come together, and then it's just a matter of my saying I like that. I seldom run by other people, but I've had good reactions to this whole series. To the as I said, I had a show in Santa Fe where I showed 120 images in various sizes and all printed on paper at that point. And somebody said, print it on aluminum. And I tried that, and it's gorgeous. Not expensive. I typically do 16 by 20, which is the proportion of the slides you saw. Those images are all, that'd be four on one side and 5 on the other side. But then they could be 4 feet by 5 feet. I mean, you can just, and to get that, I don't enlarge them. I regenerate them. TIFFs, 300 pixels per inch. This is the standard for printing digital art. I send it off to Brooklyn, and if somebody's bought it, they get it in the mail at some point, and then I get the money. I pay for the process, and then I've already collected the money from the art lover. I haven't sold a lot of them because they're a taste, and they're modern, abstract in a sense. Well, actually, truly abstract, because if you start with a recognizable image and you do stuff to it, that's the definition of abstraction. Abstraction is used for a whole lot of things, but precisely you have to have something to start at that is almost recognizable, and then do things to it that make it almost recognizable, and then you've done abstraction.
I like that definition. And a little tangent, I got to see Cage do performance, I think about 94, 93, 94. I had someone in the Q&A after a half-hour performance raise their hand and said, what do you think about people who don't like your music? And he leaned in the microphone slowly and said, "That's not my problem."
Now, who is this you're talking about?
John Cage.
Yeah, I saw something like that, and the woman that asked the question was vicious. Why do you do that? Why do you? He just said, well, you know how he talked.
Yeah.
Oh, it's what I like to do.
Yeah.
That was the full answer. That's what I like to do.
Yeah.
Very, very peaceful man.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said his extended answer was, in Europe, this piece lasts 2 hours. In America, it lasts 30 minutes. And he said,
yeah, right.
"Oh no, that was what's the difference between Americans and Europeans?" And he said, "Oh, this performance was 30 minutes. In Europe, it was about 2 hours. The promoter, here's an art college. I've been invited to do what I do, and you've come here to experience what I do." And he goes, "But in Europe, I was booking like a punk club with theater seating and all these people sitting there." And he said, "My piece was 2 hours. I did the full piece. At some point, things got blurry because someone had taken my glasses. I just did my whole performance, and by the end of it, and people got up and milled around, and because by the end of it, everything was clear because my glasses were back on my face. Everybody was all back in their seats, and they stood up and applauded for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between Americans and Europeans when it comes to art. So as far as this process of generative art, and I love the idea that you're using abstraction of an image, and then you're taking it from the digital realm into the physical realm. And so many digital artists or physical artists I meet are only one or the other. But you're using the software technology to produce physical art as well.
Yeah. Well, I can only say that I was lucky at about age 25 to recognize that the separation of music and art was purely the limitations of technology. And this is why you've got a painter over here and you've got a guy with a harpsichord over here. The what's going on in the head for this kind of expression and organizing of things, it's for me it's a there's no difference between the process. And I guess because I started as a musician, when I make films, I think of gestures, I think of arrivals, I think of punctuation. I put in black for silence. I put in the breathing points, and like you wonder. People say, well, where do I breathe? Well, you breathe where the periods are, where the commas are. You don't breathe just before the last most important word of the phrase. I can't help falling in love with you. You hear that all the time. And I had as I say, when I was in high school, I was equally driven by music. I was just forced to choose, but the art has always been coming back and grabbing onto the music. And the changes of style right now, I've told all my students it's going to be impossible to have a career as a composer without knowing digital stuff. It's not going to be, you're not generation two, they're not going to be composers. We're going to be artists who make what it's visual stuff. They're people that are even generating poetry. That's not been so successful, but it gets better. And we just have to stop thinking about the first thing that you posed was why is it different now than it used to be? Well, it used to be we didn't have as strong a communication, so things didn't change as often. So we would spend 100 years writing Renaissance music, and then somebody would get tired, spend another 150 years doing Baroque music, and then they get tired of that, and then 150 years of doing classical music. Some bugger came along at the end and did it better than anybody could possibly imagine, and everybody said, "Uh-oh, we gotta start again. We gotta start with something else." But I guess basically after the Second World War, certainly in the 20th century, everybody knew about what everybody else was doing, except the people that were enclosed into the Iron Curtain countries. When those opened up, all these Russian electronic music composers came out, and their music was very different from what it was elsewhere, but it was good. And the only thing it was missing, well, they got the memo to say, well, things are going to change. So starting in the 20th century, we don't have a musical style. We don't have a musical style. Well, if you only measure it from Europe, if you go around the world, then that whole description doesn't work at all, because they keep the same style sometimes for 1,000 years. And they're not driven by this need that we got to do it different, and we got to do it better, and we got to do it first. I'm watching these things on Facebook, and this is the first time this has ever been done. There was a guy who was talking about third notes and 17th notes. Thomas Morley, 1585, talked about a kind of a rhythm. I have a piece that I think I sent you where I play it on my MIDI horn, and it's a simple line played over and over again while the two accompaniment lines go crazy, 17 in the time of 14. And it gets more and more complicated until the end, and then there's a kind of a breath, and it feels like it just said, oh God, now it's over. And nothing happened like that again until Stockhausen in the 20th century, but it's always been there. You tell a music theory teacher that there's such a thing as a third note, not a triplet, but a third note. And they say, no, there's no such thing. There are fours, eights, 16s, twos. But it's only because the notation then binds us in place. That's my professor rant.
I love that, because it's near to this Buddhist idea of the thing and the word for the thing, and that people get attached to the word of the thing so much that they actually think the word for the thing is the thing.
Right.
and they can't actually fully perceive the thing. So cat becomes more important than the actual animal we've attributed that to. We saw this with Pluto, right? As it was Americans are proud they discovered a planet, an American planet, and well, it turned out to be a lot smaller than they thought, and over decade after decade came by, and it was smaller and smaller. But American pride was involved, so it was still a planet, even though it's something else. And the word got more important than the thing that the word was for. And I think with notation, the act of writing, and folks, if you're not familiar with this, and we're getting down in music theory here, when you perform music, how do you tell someone else how to perform that same piece of music? It's been an ongoing challenge in humanity, and in the West we started developing certain ways of writing down things to tell someone else how to play it, and at a certain point you can get so into the how of writing that the writing becomes perceived as being music. And
I must have gotten that name thing from Buddhism. I kind of dabble in it, but I tell my students all the time, as soon as you name something, you remove the likelihood that you can interpret it some other way. And this is essential to digital art. The thing that binds metasynth and Artmatic together to me is not the visual or the sonic. It's the fact that I can go back to a bit of data. They're numbers. They're not colors. They're not rhythms. They're not notes. Until I say that number now, because it's higher on the screen, is a higher note, and this one is later, and then you've already set it up so the red ones are on the right and the green ones are on the yellow ones are in the middle, which is great. But you don't really do anything with the blue. I wrote a max patch that makes blue forward and backwards, so I have a quadraphonic version of metasynth, not as varied, but it can move sound around in 3 dimensions. And when some of these first software came out and people were really objecting that you didn't do C, D, E, and whenever somebody tries to lay that on me, I say, well, if you have C major 0, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and you want D major, you just add 2 to all of those. You don't have to remember that now this one's not going to be a natural, it's going to be a sharp, and then there's another sharp up here, where each transposition is an exception. But if you say that those numbers, I've used melodies to do spatial location or loudness.
This reminds me of blues. When you have note structure, even though you have like 3 chords, tonic, subdominant, and dominant in the blues, you nevertheless have the ability to bend notes. Be with guitar strings or harmonica, you can bend the notes, and even in some jazz songs, you don't start on the ones. Sometimes you start on the previous 8, and you play with the framework. You have the framework, but then you cheat it and play with it. I mean, you learn how to get outside the box. First, you have the box, you present the box, and then you deliberately violate the box by getting outside of it. And I think what you've taken it is to the next level.
Yeah, but I want to enforce or reinforce. I didn't do any of this originally. There is almost no brand new idea, unless you're talking about Da Vinci or Einstein. There's almost no. It's somebody else did it, and you got it from them, or you got it from somewhere you don't remember. And you didn't understand it, and you did it differently, and it turned out to be something valuable. Where do sticky notes come from? Who ever thought of chia pets? I mean, where do those ideas come from? Well, they're not essentially original. I mean, we're a mass of human people who are creative and perceptive, and we have needs. I mean, this is where things we really need, like the plow that does this instead of this, and change civilization. When somebody said, well, why don't we just, or maybe one got bent over. There are lots of things well, I mentioned sticky notes. That was a glue that wasn't successful for the thing they wanted to do. but it was
Yeah.
perfect for sticking something on. My monitors are covered with little sticky notes about to remind me of things.
It's like
Yeah,
all roads lead to
All
Rome.
around the computer.
yeah, because I there's a nice margin on these old computers, so and
Perfect for the sticky
I
note.
get it. Yeah. So it fits perfectly. Got two rows on the bottom, and I've got a little sticky note that says "hide" over my screen.
So you so you take something that might be even perceived as a failure, and
Yeah.
you put it in a new context and give it meaning, and boom.
Yeah. I mean, how do you explain an artist like Jackson Pollock? This is a guy. His paintings sell for millions of dollars. This guy got really good at spilling things. I mean, it is. I mean, no. I mean, that's not really a joke. But he got an idea, or maybe it just maybe he tipped over his easel and eight colors splashed down on the thing. Wow, that sounds like a good idea. You never know. And when you have rules about how art is made, that's a killer. In fact, I think something was still blocking my
Oh,
camera.
yeah. When I think of Jackson Pollock, I think of how William S. Burroughs took that to the next level with a shotgun and spray cans. He would take the canvas and then he would arrange, compressed aerosol spray cans, and then he'd hit them with shotgun blast and let them spray all over the place. Painting done.
Well, John Cage with the brush, he had a coarse brush. He tipped it in ink and he smashed it on a piece of notation paper, and those became the notes.
Nice.
But
And
art doesn't. The nice thing about art is that you really can't destroy anything with art. It's just the purest expression of human imagination. And a lot of people think they should be artists, and maybe they should have, but they don't like the people who are good at it. I've got a question that I was asked, sort of cage-like, when I first presented my things at the art symposium group, Art Santa Fe. There was this woman, when I was talking about this woman was scowling at me for the whole time, and she didn't like what I was doing. And she said, "Well, how long did it take you to do that?" And I said, 50 years. just the process of, I couldn't do those two films that you did even 10 years ago. Yeah. And I think I don't know if anybody else is using Artmatic for stills, but it's great. And the only problem I have is that you don't allow a resolution that will let me do an 8 by 10 foot thing. I'm not sure this place in New York or Brooklyn can print those, but so that would be 300 dots per inch.
Yeah.
No, the biggest I've been able to, and I've never made one, but the biggest I've ever been able to get to was either 4 by 6 foot or almost 5 foot in either direction. I haven't looked at it lately, but I somehow got to see the largest number of pixels, and then divided, did the math to see how big I could make something. And I have visions of sometime making a 4 by 6 foot image like Rings of Fire. And the wonderful thing about it is it's not like Photoshop. It's not like Photoshop where you enlarge it and then it gets grainy. You just go back and recompute the pixels.
Right, because it's all math. You're not.
And it only takes Artmatic about a minute to do that. To do a really big one. And
if you do want to do a larger piece, I would introduce you to Peter Miller if you've not been introduced. Yeah. You're a non-Facebook guy. You're like one of the few last humans on Earth. So I kept like, oh, wait, I got to introduce. Oh, wait, and I realized my whole universe is piped through Facebook. I do want to mention Danko is watching, and he does stills. He just did some self-portraits in Artmatic with still images large. And Danko, and you can mention in the comments what the largest size you can actually print, or if you're doing any hardware printing.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to do that. I live a life with the words "what if," And I'm the world's tallest elf. I'm
Oh,
Sunny
that's right.
Glare. Sunny Glare, Ballads and Airs, Celtic Tradition.
I
I'm
saw,
Reginald Gribble.
I saw the photographs when I was getting your artist picture for the week.
And I just do a bunch of other things. I cook, and I'm happily retired for 12, 13 years, and the pandemic was such a benefit to me. Stay home and work. And I don't even have this much cabin fever.
I tell
Just met a nice lady on Match.
Oh.
We've both had our shots. Sexiest thing you can say on a dating site now is I've had both my shots.
My wife and I are both introverts, so people would ask us, and we moved up to Seattle a year and a half ago, and people say, "Well, how are you doing with the pandemic?" And we're like, getting stuff done, just like usual.
Well, you can tell I'm definitely not an introvert, but I just take life as it comes, and
Nice.
I'm glad I've survived. I think I have. I think I've avoided the pandemic.
I'm going to show a couple pieces here. One will be on Artmatic, and I think these are two lecture pieces, and then one is on the Stravinsky in metasynth, and then we'll come back and talk more about art and music with Gary Lee Nielsen. Stay tuned, folks.
You can use Artmatic to make movies by animating keyframes. Here's an example from a new film that I'm making called L'Âme pour France et le Monde, Tears for France and the World. This scene uses an image by Mario Testino made as a reaction to the 2015 massacre at Charlie Hebdo, a magazine in Paris. Looking at the Artmatic screen, you see along the left side a series of 16 keyframes made with a network of graphic functions acting on the Testino image. The sliders at the lower right hand control how each box in the network behaves and influences the image. Notice the contrast of the first frame is set to 0, which gives me a fade in as it begins to play. I can have a look at the keyframes in various places. One thing I might do is change the seed image to another form of the eye, and not a really, actually very good substitution because the first couple of frames are black, but we'll go back to the other one. There's some other changes you might want to make. You can move the sliders around, and at any time return to the keyframe. That's the thing that gets stored. You can roll the dice, and if you find one you like, you can say replace that keyframe with that image. Or you can go into the forest where your current image becomes the parent of 34 daughters. We can choose a daughter, and now we have 34 grandchildren, granddaughters, grandsons, great-grand, great-great-great, etc. Any of those newborn images can be put into the keyframes. The main thing we'll probably use this for is, for those of you that don't have movies to go with your soundtracks, you can make something very quickly to have a final film, which you can then upload to YouTube and other places online, and burn to DVD.
That was a lecture on the use of Artmatic that demonstrated what Gary's been talking about generative art, where you take an idea or an image, maybe a familiar one, semi-familiar, and change it and make different choices on how to modify that piece of image and then compile those images together in a series. And we've watched a couple videos that Gary's done where he did that and set it to music. And you are watching Sunday Live with me, Caleb. We were getting into the whole art. I felt like during our previous conversation clip, we were talking about art as life, right?
Right. No.
Where you said I cook, I do this. It's not like I am an artist, I go do art. It's more of I happen to be an artist, I happen to like cooking as well, and so I do these things because I like to do these things. And it's a very different idea than production. Okay, I need to produce a painting a week for my Patreon group. And I need to make sure they're as popular as possible. And where for you is that line, or do you even have that line where you say, I'm getting into this and it's no longer fun because it's production?
Yeah, that's another complicated question, because doing something for production doesn't necessarily mean that it's not art. If you do it completely to please an audience because you have found that this sells and that doesn't sell, then it gets a little bit into commercialization. But it's still not bad if you're being creative and you're happy with it and people enjoy what you've made. But some of the stuff that I do, when I say I cook, there was a time when people had to learn how to cook to survive. They had to learn how to gather food. They had to know where it was before they learned how to plant it. And so, but my feeling about human beings is we're basically creative. I mean, those of us that survive, we're creative because we have to create things usually to survive. And cultures that don't learn how to farm, they're not around anymore. So it's more philosophy than art. There, I'm trying to come to a particular. Most of them are pretty complicated. There was a series called Connections on PBS years ago, and he would take some development centuries ago and talk about. I mentioned that plow. As soon as they figured out how to turn the earth over, they only needed one animal to pull that thing instead of six, because somebody accidentally figured out the dynamics of that thing. That led to overproduction of food, which led to markets, trade, which led to cities, which led to, in this Connections, they talked about when the people in England along that time, they had more chance to practice their longbows, which they took to Agincourt and wiped out the flower French nobility just with bows and arrows that were just extremely strong and penetrated armor. And this was all a chain of developments, creative developments. Some maybe weapons are not so good maybe as a development, but the atomic bomb was made to end World War II, and it was turned out to not to be a moral thing, and is now a curse on the earth. But it was at the time it was a creative thing. So, but for me, just the idea of being able to even have a hobby. Just do something. There are a lot of people that retire, they have nothing to do. Fortunately, they move to Santa Fe and become painters. This is the pattern. You come here, and 3 days later, you're in Art Santa Fe showing your really crappy painting. There's one woman, I've been watching her for 10 years, and she is a gorgeous artist now. And the first thing she brought in 10 years ago was like, oh my God. I think she had been an insurance salesman or something. But our education tends to look down on art. Like as soon as somebody says you can make a mistake, you can have a wrong answer, art's in trouble. Because art's not about that. It's about making the mistakes and finding something that's interesting that maybe at least one other person finds it's interesting, or maybe not doing it. Not being recognized until you're dead. Van Gogh. How many artists are like that? These poor people, these poor modern artists, there was just a PBS thing about this, their paintings are selling for $75 million. And they basically gave them away as a trade for food when they painted them. So it's a very complex kind of thing.
Have you been following the trend for cryptocurrency art investment?
No, I haven't been following that. A friend of mine just bought some Bitcoin. I thought, mm-mm. she thought it was going to make her rich, and so far it hasn't made her poor. But
It all depends. It's like any market. All depends when you buy in and what happens to that market.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
And right now, the buzz, it's just a lot of buzz because various musicians and artists have started bundling either physical works or digital works
yeah.
into NFTs,
Right.
and basically giving someone the royalty or the ownership over that art within, say, a digital
Yeah.
space. And for
okay.
example, an famous artist might do over the weekend a 4-track EP mini album, and an investor will purchase that for X dollars or X
Yeah.
bitcoins and own the only copy, because
Yeah.
that album will never be played. It is that one person's digitally paid and digitally played existence. There is no physical product at any point. And so artists are who want to eat, like you're talking about selling paintings,
Yeah,
food, are saying, "Oh, well, I can spend this weekend making a bunch of music, and because I have a famous name or, some reason that an investor would want to have some rare thing of mine, whether
Yeah.
it's a baseball card or a digital piece of music." So this is a lot of buzz around this right now, and I listened into a lecture on this, and the moderator said her opening statement was, "Please, folks, remember there is no legal precedent for the contracts that people are signing online digitally." So you don't know whether that will be held up in court, yes or no, about ownership. And please remember, Bitcoin's energy that's required for Bitcoin to exist is the same amount of energy that keeps Ukraine going. So where's all the energy going to come from to upscale these currencies? And if folks are listening to this and going, "What the heck is he talking about?"
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm not sure this is
a
in the
rabbit
same
hole.
in the same thing, but when I sell one of the images from these things we've been looking at, I retire it, and I tell the buyer that this is now the only copy of that. I haven't gotten brave enough to actually destroy the Artmatic patch, because there's 16 of them in there, and I've never sold all 16. One thing I have done, just to experiment, is just go back, just change that frame, generate a new frame that's in there so it is different. And the sets of 16, they have, I refer to them as a family. So you look at them and you say, yeah, that guy looks like he's the brother of that guy over there. And so there's a certain constancy through the 16. And so it would be easy, since we're dealing with this pseudo DNA, just to burn more. But I haven't sold enough for that to be an issue. But I have sold some, and assured the people in writing, a signed document, that there will never be another print of this thing. And these things are pretty durable. I've had some now for 3 or 4 years hanging on my own wall, and I don't see any sign of deterioration. They're not fading. They're not chipping. And this company in Brooklyn is guarantees them as well, and they haven't had any major kind of defects in what they do. I guess the technology of printing on aluminum is well known, because it's used in industry, and probably that art idea is just a spin-off. Somebody said, "Oh, I could do that on an 8x10 and sell it to somebody." But that's still creativity. That's still in effect art.
I was thinking about how in grad school, because I went through psychology and got seduced by the music department with my mentor Dan Wyman, and then ended up in the art department through Dan. And doing photography classes, the question was, well, how do you make your painting unique if you're a photographer? And at that time, with printing and silver, what people would do was you would have to sign a contract and demonstrate that you burnt the negative, so no more prints could ever be made. And
Yeah.
so the digital world is in this space where, okay, this is one painting. It's a one-off. And well, okay, if we want to have one photographic print, I take the photograph, I print it, I sign it. It's one of one. Make my statement about it, and I light the original on fire, and it is destroyed forevermore.
Yeah.
And then the question becomes, well, with digital art, what's the equivalent of that?
Yeah. Well, the only thing that protects it, if I print something at 300 DPI and then I put a picture of it on my web page, if somebody could, I've done a bit to protect it from just being copied. But if somebody takes that off and they print it at the same size as the original, it's going to look like crap. It's just not going to. But fortunately, I don't sell enough to really be worried about that. So maybe I'll be more famous in 100 years than I am now. But,
Shall we all be lucky? So lucky.
Yeah, but I guess maybe if we're getting close to the end, make something. And this city, Santa Fe, it was no joke. The people come here and they've made millions of dollars in investments or whatever, and all they wanted to come here and at age 65, 70 is to make art. They want to paint something and they want to do something. Some of them get really good, but some of them are not. The difference between them and me is I've had the luxury of being able to do art all my life, and they paid me for it. Not a lot, but I never had to worry about where my next meal came from. So, I didn't buy any Bitcoin, but I'm comfortable in retirement, so I can. But what I can't replace, back to what we talked about earlier, I guess it was before we broadcast, I can't replace the software when it doesn't work anymore.
The whole obsolescence.
Yeah, and even new versions of things, they put things in or take things out that somebody relies on. You can't do it anymore.
This is I want to show the one more video of the generative art, but this ephemerality of technology. So I've got a whole filing cabinet full of negatives, film negatives, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have a chemical studio to go in and actually dodge and burn and make this and the whole technology around that.
Yeah.
So sometimes, Photoshop comes along. I can scan the negatives with a high-end scanner, take into Photoshop, and achieve similar goals.
Yeah.
But I used a lot in art school land camera, where you'd pull the film through, and you'd squeeze the caustic paste on the image, and you'd peel it back, and then you'd get the image you wanted. And the whole Polaroid thing of manipulating Polaroids, that was something, I can't. If Polaroid's not available, I can't do that, right? When the technology changes enough that it's unavailable to the artist. And software does this in this very, my mind was about to say insidious way, but in this very funky way, because it's not like there's so much investment, right? It's a platform. It's like if someone got rid of paint. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, why are there no brushes in my paint kit anymore? We discontinued brushes.
Yeah. Well, there's stuff like that going on. There really is. I'm obsessive with backups. I've got backups of Microsoft Word files that Microsoft Word can't read anymore. Now there's a small way to deal with that. You bring it into a text-only thing and erase all that garbage, and then at least you have the original text, which you can then put into the new. But that's an hour's process instead of just inserting the disk and saying, I want to get the program notes from a piece that's 10 years old. And
artists, unlike businesses that are maybe, I shouldn't say that. A lot of businesses, regulatory businesses, whatnot, have to maintain records. So the archivability. Right, if you did a bunch of paintings in a very archival paint, or you did a bunch of photographs on archival paper, you have some permanence, so that art is of value in 100 years. But with a lot of digital art, if you can't access the art in 5 years after it was created, that's a real challenge. All right, we're going to talk more about that in the after party, but I want to show one more of these generative pieces before then. Hang tight, folks. We're interviewing Gary Lee Nelson on art and music this week. And one thing that struck me about this topic of pop versus art that I think about a lot, because my work exists in both spaces. And I'm very aware of when people get a sense of one or the other. And I've been trying to think about how to contextualize that. And I realized art takes time. You might like a piece, you might not like a piece. That's beside the fact. A lot of pop, you don't have to take time with. It's instant. It's, do I like that? Oh, is that a great beat? Oh, yeah, cool. It's a fairly fast response of whether or not you're going to like a piece of pop music or not. But with, I guess I'll call it fine arts, both musical and visual, I think the key difference is time. Can you sit with something? When you're in an art gallery and you sit down in front of a painting, a large photograph, and you just really look. On the pop level, you say, oh, that's an interesting painting. I like those colors, or it's interesting subject material. When you sit on that bench in the art gallery and you just let yourself look for a while and you just take the time, all of a sudden you'll notice things. Things will start to come out. There might be a character in the corner that you didn't notice at first that then ties in and gives a whole nother meaning to the rest of the piece. Even in video art, where it has this feeling of watching TV, the video artists that I like, you have to sit and watch and experience because it plays out over time. So my challenge to all of you this week is find something that you're going to take time with. Maybe it's cooking, like Gary was talking about. You're taking the time. Yesterday I spent about 4 hours cooking after we got back from skiing. And I just took the time to figure out how to saute mushrooms. I just took the time to just be there with the food. And find, or maybe a piece of art or something, piece of music, and take some time with it and revisit it and see what pops out in the corner of your eye. That's your mystic moment for the week. We're now going into the after party. We are here on Sunday Live. This is our after party where we loosen up. I'm going to show a longer piece. We've been watching 2-minute pieces. And we'll have a little conversation, and then I'm going to put you into a 10-minute piece for you to just sit and digest. And like I was saying in the mystic moment, to take the time to absorb. Gary, for me, because I grew up in a working class family with a strong sense of practical value, I'll call it. Mm-hmm. I remember my dad once said, "What is the point of a painting if it is not drawn accurately?" And he pointed to a painting of a horse and he goes, "See, that's a painting. I don't know what that other stuff is." Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I have had in my life this sense of tension between art world and pop world. And my music early on was much more abstract, asymmetrical, and then probably about by the mid 90s it was becoming more symmetrical, and certainly by the 2000s I was doing very 4-bar, 8-bar, middle 16 electronic and pop music. And I guess that maybe there's a side of me that has always said, oh, is someone going to like that? Or what will they think about that? And maybe it's the parent-child thing, and I think, oh, what, would my father like this piece that I'm working on? But I'm thinking about those elements. And the key thing I thought about with this week's episode was taking time. I find that the gallery, the museum, is a space that gives you the opportunity to sit down and experience a piece in a longer form or with a longer amount of time focused on it. I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I think I'm having a therapy session, Gary.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of galleries in Santa Fe, and the thing that basically determines what's in there is what sells. There are lots of wonderful artists in Santa Fe who cannot get into a gallery. And if they can, I investigated some of my things, and it was going to cost me more than I was going to make to have my things in the gallery, because I had to pay for having them made in the first place. And then they would take so much in commission that the price had to go up. And then they didn't sell, and so they took them out. The combination of the what it cost just to make them physically made it impossible to sell. And again, I'm lucky I don't have to make money from it. But it's difficult. You probably have to distinguish between a museum and a gallery, because the gallery's there to make money, and they're not making money now. That whole thing has dried up in Santa Fe. Many of the galleries have closed. But I don't know. I think what makes pop music successful is if it sells. And how many pieces that were on the top 10 or 20, whatever it is now, 5 years ago, do you even remember? We remember the Beatles, probably Leonard Cohen, and the music that was really substantial and lasts. And a lot of a lot of the folk music from, I still remember a lot of Pete Seeger. But I don't think Pete's not around anymore, but I don't know if he made a lot of money from it. But we're in a culture now where everything has to be measured on whether it's first. Who's the fattest person on this competitive show to see who can be the fattest or the thinnest, and there's always a winner, and then the show isn't around anymore because there's not that much substance to it. I think it's a question of culture beyond art. I don't know that. Because we don't know what sells in art. I said, the richest artists are dead, except they're not rich. They're the people that bought their art, or the people with the foresight. We had a curator of a museum at Oberlin who bought almost all of the famous artists, the 20th century artists, when they were unknown and selling for nothing. And what she did was to put it in this little Allen Art Museum in Oberlin. Has all of these masterpieces from everybody that was famous in the 20th century. And they closed down for renovation, and I saw stuff from the Oberlin Art Museum all over the world. Walking on, that looks familiar. And I go, yeah, on loan from Oberlin College. And and the woman, when she bought them herself, and then she gave them all to the college when she passed, which is a nice way to do it. So there's Andy Warhol stuff there, Jackson Pollock. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to name a now famous artist that isn't in that collection. But it's only because that one person approached it in a different way. It's not, what's not going to make me rich, what's going to make me rich, or what's going to be popular. Just say, I looked at that, I like that, I think that that's significant, and then she preserved it. but we, as a culture, we don't do that. You know, I don't even have the magazines that were delivered here 6 months ago. I read them and they're gone.
You made a great distinction about the business, the gallery business versus the museum institutions. And museum is the idea of preservation, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so so she acted as a museum. This is of cultural value. I'm going to,
Yeah.
retain this and then provide it to the university and through the university to other institutions. And that is very different than banks. But a lot of people don't realize that banks buy art. They buy a lot of art.
Right. Yeah.
And put them in a vault because they have been assessed at a certain value.
Well, somebody told me once that, somebody told me once that my art, these things we've been looking at, would be a great sale in new hotels where they every floor has almost the same painting, but not quite. And there are artists who will go in and they will present some ideas, and the architect or whoever makes the decision says, okay, we're going to buy. We need 10 on each floor. It's 40 floors, so we need 400 of these paintings. Did I do the math right? Maybe not. 40 floors times 10. Yeah, that's 400. And you go into a hotel, and it's often very appealing art. But is it art? Is it still art because it was sold as part of a construction plan? Some people would say no. I would go just by looking at it and just myself saying, I like that, I don't like it.
Yeah, and my opinion is that Warhol answered that question, right? Mass production of art was, is Warhol art? I think people say yes,
Yeah.
And did he mass produce? Yes.
Yeah.
And so for me,
he was a clever guy.
Yeah, you have artists, even though stuff exists before, you do have individuals who will contextualize art and music in a certain way that I think just answers those questions and puts them to rest. Yeah.
But a lot of these questions, as I get older, a lot of these questions are just something we talk about in a context like this. But do they really matter if you start looking at a span of 1,000 years?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We've got some really old art from the Greeks and Romans, and it's still beautiful, and it's still art. But what else was there? They'll find a whole place that has a pottery dump, shards of beautiful pottery, and it's just it broke and or had a leak, and we couldn't keep the soup in anymore, and they threw it out the window, and now it would be millions of dollars. So,
and that's every milk carton and food packaging that we throw out daily becoming art.
Well, I don't know if the milk cartons are not as substantial as as handmade pottery.
True. But
who knows? There was an interesting commercial years ago for Pepsi, and it was a professor in some 100 years in the future, and he's walking around, and they're in a tract home, a ranch house, and the students say, "Well, what's that?" And he points to a TV. He says, "Well, that was part of their religious practice. They would kneel here every night and say their prayers." And he's got it all wrong. Everything they hold up to him, and then he holds up. Remember, it's a Pepsi ad, so he holds up a Coke bottle, and he looks at it. He says, "I have no idea."
Ooh.
I mean, that was
the ad agency for that one got paid.
Oh yeah, well it's a little slam at the competitor, but still, it said a lot about. And we look at things from the distant past, and people are going to look at what we've got here. What is? They're going to wonder. I don't know if you can see that bookshelf behind me, but it's leaning.
Oh yes, it's leaning.
Because I put it. It was supposed to take two people. I put it together myself, and I wondered why the back didn't square up. But I got it on there, and I got it in there, and I put it up, and it's leaning. It's now, there's a sign on the bottom that says "Leaning Bookshelf of Santa Fe."
Nice.
And I don't have the strength to take it apart and do it right, but it's not falling down. But somebody's going to come along and say, "Oh
functioning.
yes,
Um,
yeah."
I want to talk about Sharon wants to know what age groups you taught when you were in your teaching career.
Mostly college, and mostly undergraduate. Oberlin had no graduate programs in music. Well, they had a few, but not in general in the conservatory. Um, I taught for some years at the Interlaken National Music Camp, and those were mostly high school students. Since I've been here in Santa Fe, I've taught at the Santa Fe University of Art and Design and the New Mexico School for the Arts. I taught a course there for 3 artists and 3 composers using metasynth, XX, and Artmatic. And there's I think I sent you the link to it, but they turned out about well over 6 of them in 8 weeks turned out well over an hour's worth of videos with original music. I had to score a couple of them because they just didn't get their act together. But there's a playlist on. If I didn't send it to you, I could send it to you. And you guys provided the software free, and we really appreciated that. And Yamaha gave us some DGX 660 keyboards, nice ones, and we got some computers from a local thing, so we were able to set up a little lab. They didn't continue it after I taught it, but the class was a big success. So I've taught over the years a lot.
Mm.
You know, mostly high school through college.
And this work, you mentioned your YouTube channel. Can you remind us what the name of that is?
I'll have to say the New Mexico School for the Arts is the university, and I think it's called the New Mexico School NMSA Video Project. I think that's what it's called. But I can send it to you, and it's got the stuff there. I noticed a year or two later that they plagiarized one of the students used one of your built-in examples that I didn't happen to be familiar with, and it came out. But there, and it was back to something I said before. It was a wonderful thing that happened with it, is the artists started making music, particularly with XX, by painting things in and random number, rolling the dice and so forth, and the musicians started making videos. Because I don't know. Well, can I describe for your listeners that don't know about Artmatic? You open Artmatic and they already give you a really, possibly very interesting kind of thing. And if you don't like it, you roll the big dice. They give you another one. And so a lot of them started just that way. They just rolled the dice till they found one they liked, and then they worked with it. So it was first of all taste. Well, accident, taste. Accident is John Cage. Taste, I like that one. And now the labor to make it into something I like more. There's the seed of the idea, and now we'll do it. And almost all the videos were made that way, and a lot of them had kind of a program to them. There was a sort of a backstory to what it was about, provocative names, and so forth. But there were the 6 of them, and by the end of 8 weeks, and we only had them 4 hours on Wednesday for 8 weeks. So whatever that is, that's 32 hours for well over an hour of music, and so it was a marvelous thing to watch. And somebody asked me my teaching philosophy, and I said I try to find the best students I can, and I stay the hell out of their way. And it just if you never tell them that is the wrong thing to do, because if it's art, it's not wrong. It might be a lousy idea, but it's not wrong. And those wrong answers piled over years start to create right answers. If you stick with it and you do have some basic intelligence and talent, eventually it's going to turn into something that maybe nobody ever likes, but it'll be turned into something that is better than what you started with, and better than what's produced by the people that don't have the discipline to stick with it. It's just it's a hard job, hard work.
Yeah, that sticking with it and iteration.
Yeah.
I take this down to the guitars that are sitting around the house, which are very difficult instruments to casually try to play, unless you do it in a unique way. And uh, Sharon says, thank you for your answer. And I want to say that I have something I'm watching with this current generation in these areas. It started when I did about 8 years of karaoke every night. And so I was seeing generations each year, a new generation would come on board of being able to get into the bar and doing karaoke. And I saw a lot of their definitions of things and structures of things just fall apart. When they would go to do a song in the early years, they usually sang music from their generation. I'm an 80s kid, early 80s kid, late 70s kid, so I'm going to sing songs from that period.
Yeah.
And then I started noticing something strange happening, which is the younger kids weren't doing that. They were singing songs from jazz, rock, blue. It was all over the place. And I realized because all music is now available streaming through Pandora, it's no longer what is the hit of the day or the da-da-da or my generation. It's, oh, I heard that. Oh, that sounded cool. My other friends thought that was cool too. Right. So a lot of that talk about that barrier between art and music or pop and what's art.
Yeah.
I don't think they care. To them, it's all just experience and data.
I'd say one exception to that is a lot of new wave by way of YouTube found its way to a youth that were far too young to have known new wave music and underground new wave and punk, and yet have embraced it wholeheartedly thanks to YouTube as a genre, as a time period, even though they were not even born before then. So you have entire genres that become popular. YouTube was largely responsible for that in the case of new wave.
Or there was a recent case where the Beatles song "Hey Bulldog," which was a favorite track of mine growing up. I think it was on maybe the B-side of the Magical Mystery Tour album or some other compilation I had. And this was a song that at the time was considered not a top song. When they were doing the Yellow Submarine movie, it was written for the movie. It was supposed to be in the movie, and it was cut for not only musical reasons but animation reasons. So here's a piece of the Beatles history that essentially was cut. Okay, that's B-roll, right? Yeah. But the guys who did Guitar Hero or what's the other? Not Guitar Hero. The other one, Rock School, Rock. I don't know. I'm forgetting. Anyway, one of these interactive games where you play the plastic guitar and whatnot. Mm-hmm. They chose "Hey Bulldog" to be a Beatles song. So you had a whole generation of kids who grew up playing the video game and sing the Beatles' "Hey Bulldog," and that song has gotten more popular now than it ever was in history. And they actually went back because the music video that was released for Lady Madonna, that was a big hit, they had actually filmed the band doing "Hey Bulldog," and the editor had taken them singing "Hey Bulldog" and chopped it up in a way that it would fit with Lady Madonna because that became the single. I guess John maybe wanted the other one to be a single, so they had shot the film. So rather than having a Lady Madonna video, so they've actually gone back to the Beatles film archive, took the original clips, and re-edited it back to "Hey Bulldog" because "Hey Bulldog" is now a bigger attractor than Lady Madonna. And this is, half a century or more later. So this digital taking in of art and reprocessing in different ways in different commercials really has this sort of generative, when we're talking about generative art, this culturally generative piece that I didn't see before. I didn't see before 10 years ago.
I wonder if it has something to do with just that there is so much out there, and cruising the web seems to be very powerful. I do it myself, and I like to say, well, why am I doing this? Because I'm wasting my time. But you discover things, and there are lots of stuff out there, and you discover things. And then the other thing that everybody wants to be is new. It has to be new. And if you discover a thing that you didn't know about before, I've heard a lot of people, they'll find something and they say, this is new, this is brand new. And I'm thinking, geez, 1950s, maybe 1940s. I go back that far. And the need to be new. We talked about this before. And yeah.
That's
But
I
no,
think the
I
definition of I think the definition of new has changed from this is like the new scene to I discovered it and no other people don't know about
oh,
it.
right, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
having a discussion with a guy like that on Facebook. Here's a new approach to rhythm, and he's talking about that stuff with Thomas Morley. You know, it's the most familiar representation of that is, I want to live in America, ba-da-da, ba-da-da, bum, 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 just dividing six, accenting six beats. And that is it was called prolation at the time, mixed meters, mixed rhythms. And I sent him one of my patches where I have all these instruments. They're all playing different rhythms, and they all start at different times, but they sync. And it's easy to do when you're doing just basic kind of, I don't even know whether it's trigonometry or what it is, but it's basic mathematics. And then I sent him the thing of me playing that Thomas Morley piece, the Christ Cross it was called, and it's got all these complicated rhythms on there where I'm on my little electronic horn, I'm just playing the same tune over and over and over again with orchestrated different. It'd be flute now and muted trumpet, and I didn't really comment. I was just it's just say, well, there are these things have been going on lately and years ago, and it was really a self-aggrandizing thing, and his thing is always a new approach to rhythm, and Stockhausen did it, Leonard Bernstein did it.
That's someone mining the past for their own
Yeah,
their own
and
PR.
he sort of lectured me on what he had written in his doctoral dissertation,
Oh, jeez.
and asked me to check my facts, and yeah. But yeah, I don't know if that's young people or I don't think he was that young, but we grow up thinking, well, we have to make a contribution that nobody ever made, you know.
maybe contribution to history lessons.
Yeah, you can't. You really can't. You can do something good, and you can do some things that are very good, but you can't do something that has never been done before. We got 8 billion people in this world.
Nothing's new under the sun.
Yeah, right. I mean, there are a few ideas. I don't remember. I always say Einstein, but I can't remember exactly what he's famous for. And I think I've heard lately that some people are saying, well, what he discovered is really not true or not new or whatever. But
The only thing that Einstein, I think, brought, the unique character that Einstein brought was the idea that you could use imagination to explore physics.
right.
That was his new contribution. Like everybody else was looking at the math first and and he came in and said, I can daydream and do physics that's tangible. And that was revolutionary for the time. So a lot of times it's not what you do. And of course, all the actual math, his first wife did a lot of, and they went to university together. And so, and she got the money when he got the Nobel Prize, and he, held onto the prize. So it wasn't like he did it on his own.
Yeah.
But what he brought as a person to it was the idea of these fantasies actually being productive. And I think with Freud, again, psychology had been around for a long time, but Freud's idea that the personality of a person was sort of a side effect of the medical. And that was revolutionary because people took personality as being something tangible. So in those cases, but was psychology around before? Yes. Was physics around before? So sometimes it's not the thing, but to where we started with it. It's how you are generative with the thing.
Yeah.
And you chose to go X.
We've been
versus
talking
Y.
a lot about art, but almost everything we said also applies to science and original research. That kind of the COVID the COVID vaccination process was something that somebody figured out how to talk to our genes and how to fool the virus and prepare our our germ control with a big hammer. So when the virus comes in, is looking around. But there's some kind of a chemical message, and that's a childish way I just described it, but that's how I understood it. It was very complex, but it was something that was discovered through these years of looking at the flu virus. And somebody knew how to do this. They figured out how to do it, and that's why the vaccines have come along so fast. We're about ready to have a fourth one in the field, and that, when this happened back in 1919, they just had to let it run out. They just killed lots and lots of people, and finally, I guess it wasn't quite as serious, but it's serious enough. But there was some researcher, I can't remember who it was, some famous person like Einstein. He says, research is what I'm doing, what I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's a very good point about science and art. Is
and mathematics.
The child. Mathematics, I guess for me, mathematics, I got into math as I got older, when I was younger. Well, I should say arithmetic gave me a nightmare. So I liked algebra, but I didn't like subtraction. So anyhow, the idea of that sense of exploration and not saying right, wrong, all that judgment, but saying, I'm going to go explore something.
Yep.
And something will result of that, and that pure research aspect to it. And then there might be an application of this. Okay, I did a piece. Yeah. It's selling like hotcakes right now. Oh, I can apply it commercially. Or I did something, I did a painting, and it made upset people calm down. Now it has a therapeutic application. So the idea that you do stuff, but you don't, a lot of certainly pure research and math, people are always saying, well, yeah, but what is it good for? I'm like, well, you just got your cell phone out of your pocket. They think that someone sat down and invented all the technology for that cell phone. No, what happened, all this pure research was going on.
Yeah.
And someone skimmed bits and pieces here and there, and these integrations happen and eventually ended up into this product. But if you're not doing that pure research, you're not going to get there. And art and improvisation, to me, is a part of that pure research.
Yeah. This is a completely different, well, not a completely different subject, but there is such a thing as lateral thinking. And women, according to my reading, women do it sort of naturally. Men are more linear thinkers. We say, well, that's where I'm going, and these are the steps there, and I'll just and often the solutions are on the side. I mean, you're driving down the highway, and your solution is over here sitting on a bench, and so lateral thinking is so that you're looking at a broader field, and I had to learn it, being a man, and I learned it because I started noticing the way my female students were thinking. We had one incident where I had two ladies in my class, and they wouldn't present their work because the guys made fun of them. They said sampling increment when they meant sampling rate. The guys all giggled, and so they got to the point where and I talked to them about it, and then the next class I went into, and I said to the guys, have you ever noticed that when we give a concert that the ladies' pieces are so much better than yours, so much more artistic, so much more, wanting to hear them again, and you guys are like collecting baseball cards, learning everything about the software, all the model numbers, all the serial numbers, and then 5 minutes before the concert you make a dumb piece. And that's when I got onto lateral thinking. And now my department, there were almost no women at Oberlin when I first started there, and now it's a majority of women, and the boys are all lateral thinking because they're working. It's a kind of a sex thing, a gender thing that I hope is working across the culture, because it's good for the culture to have twice as many people who can solve problems that have not so obvious solutions.
When I look back at my life, I'd say I went into multimedia I was one of the first people to get a graduate degree in multimedia. Maybe the first person. I don't know. And I look at why did I go into multimedia? Why was that sort of thinking, that lateral thinking, so common for me? And I have two older sisters. I'm very close to my mom, and I think the language that they used to describe things, I was around so much that that language helped shape my thinking to always think, how is this thing connected to something else?
Right.
I definitely think there's a gender thing there, and male friends will be very goal oriented, or my male professors would say, well, how are you going to achieve that? I had a philosophy professor of all people, who shouldn't say this, say, you will never get anywhere until you focus on one thing.
Right. Yeah.
And he said, that is going to be your biggest problem in life. And I was like, oh, thank you very much. And then a couple of years later, I'm, in the multimedia program, making video, making art, making images, making music.
Yeah.
I want to, we've been having a great chat, but I do want to show some more art. Yeah. This is a longer piece done in Artmatic, and it's called Whirl. And was the music done with your sonogram software?
Well, I have a story.
Okay.
This is not one of my best pieces, so maybe you could show about 2 minutes of it and you get the idea.
Okay.
I owned Ableton Live and Reason for a long time and never learned them. And they were offering a course at the local community college in those two things. And so I signed up and I got into the class, and I never quite understood the interface of Live, and it was a lot of too many buttons and dials and I was learning it, but I was learning it quicker than the other students because I had more experience. And I was asking, the professor got annoyed with me because I was asking. He would say, well, are there any questions that everybody wants to hear? And he would look at me, and so for the final, halfway through the semester, we finished with Live. The final, you're supposed to write a piece between 1 and 2 minutes long using Live, and that was it. Well, I wrote a 10-minute piece that included a film, and I wrote a max patch that was the fingers on Live. It would be moving these things around, and I found a way of simulating the keystrokes from the computer keyboard. So I was sending messages to Live that was like typing. It was typing the various kinds of things that you could type. And there was a little kind of neat little interface in Max, a standalone app. I got a B- because I hadn't just used Live. And then I said, well, I don't need Reason, and I dropped the course, and I forgot to. I didn't drop the course. I didn't go to class for Reason, and I failed the course. And I hung up between my PhD and my Pi Kappa Lambda plaque. But that's like, this is just a problem of you got to do it this way. And this guy he had a way he wanted us to do it, and most of the people did because they didn't know any better. They were young, and I'm trying to think. There's a
learning and education quote. Oh, geez, it's floating around my mind now about parrots. I don't know. I'll paraphrase it drastically. It's like I would rather graduate something like a failed experiment than a classroom of parrots.
Right.
Who spat out the right answer. Something along these lines, and it's true. It's like if you're just programming people to pull the same lever. So I spent 15 years, but before helping Eric reboot UNI Software, I spent 15 years in biotech. Yeah. And they picked me up as a multimedia person because they heard that there's this thing that could help learning and being online. Mm-hmm. They're a bit behind the times. And so 15-year-old career in biotech happens after that. And one of the challenges in teaching people in biotech is to make sure that they do not memorize. because all the procedures are changing all the time. So
Right.
if they memorize 10 milliliters this and da-da-da,
Yeah.
and then tomorrow you change it to 20 milliliters because the formula is perfect, and all of a sudden they do 10 milliliters because that's what they remember, you just blown $1 million of product down the drain. So the teaching is not about memorization, learning something. It's about learning how to think and learning how to be dynamic in your thinking.
Yeah. Well, we forget with our formalized education now, we forget that 300 or 400 years ago and all the way back to the beginning of human history, we learned things by standing next to somebody who already knew how to do them. And once in a while we figured out a way to do it better. And that was the way education worked. We didn't have classrooms, seating by alphabetical order, right answers, wrong answers. And my kids didn't go through that. They had a different kind of grade school system in Oberlin. It was really cool. And so they entered middle school and high school with the ability to make a judgment. They didn't rebel, but they found ways of working creatively in spite of. And then the teachers were a little more flexible a little better than average in the Oberlin school districts. But it's hard to when you have an education where you're always worried about, did I do this right? Did I do this right? How do you discover something when you're in fear of and making mistakes all the time?
Yeah, I think the biggest crime in the United States against kids and whatnot was the development of standardized testing. It had started when even in the 70s when I was a kid, but there was still this critical thinking aspect. But what I saw over time was it became less and less critical thinking, more and more standardized testing, while technology and the actual employment market was going away from standardized.
Yeah.
Because whatever you learned that year was wrong the next year.
Yeah.
Because the technology had changed. And now it's every 5 minutes. So standardized testing doesn't teach you how any of the skills you need to actually perform in today's commercial market. So that's the real shame of what's happened in the U.S. around that. But anyway, I've gotten a little off the topic of Whirl. I do want to show at least a piece of this, and we'll be right back with Gary Lee Nelson. That was a clip called Whirl by Gary Lee Nelson. Check him out. Search on on YouTube to find his channel. He's got a bunch of pieces that combine abstract visuals and music. Really wonderful stuff. I liked the Whirl. You were kind of dogging Whirl. there, Gary, and I liked it because if it was meditative. Maybe it's because I liked the end of 2001 when I was a kid. So I'm already that sort of ambient traveling aspect to it. I really liked.
Yeah, it always when I was doing it struck me as more like a screensaver.
Oh, as far as the image.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But
I
it was
stare
done.
at
It was done
screensavers.
entirely. It was done with 16 frames, stretched out over 10 minutes, in very slow evolution.
That's
I did one. It says it's in color because the first one I did was in black and white, and then I redid it in color.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's reminding me of like 60s shows in color.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I was thinking that when I put that on there. I thought, oh, that sounds kind of familiar. Yeah.
we've been watching. My wife goes to sleep only when the TV's on.
Hmm.
So, and I go to sleep only when it's quiet. So we've had to learn how to negotiate and navigate this.
Yeah.
So now she has an 11 o'clock cutoff, and the TV will go off. But because it's every night and it's ongoing, we have to find series that have the right tone. Like they're not too engaging or not done. So we've been watching Dark Shadows, the 60s soap opera, from like the first episode, and we're now into, I think it started in 66, now we're up into 69, like episode 1000 or something. So every night is like, just the sound of Dark Shadows playing for 2 hours. And so it started in black and white, went to color. So I've been thinking about that whole 60s transition, and like that brand in color, I realized, they put that in the show, not to tell people that it was in color, but to tell people who didn't have color TVs that they were missing something, so they would go buy one, right?
Yeah, right. Sell it.
There's you always encounter these little things that you're like, oh, that's very nice of them telling people, and you realize, no, that's not what's going on here.
Yeah.
When you're working, mentioned Artmatic and the 16 frames. I think Whirl was a good example again of Eric's concept there, that the frames are just key moments, but what you can do in a frame when you set up animation, you're setting up in the system, you put the animation in the system. And I got my wife into Artmatic about 6 weeks ago, and the first thing she started doing is these time components within the Artmatic system. So she only needed 2 frames to do what she was doing. Because when I came at the software, I'd been aware of it. I'd been a friend of Eric since the 90s, but I'd never really used it in any depth. And I'm like, 16 frames as a film person? That's like, how could I do anything with 16 frames? And he would try to explain to me the deeper ideas, but now I get it. I get the idea that each frame can be a whole little world of its own, and a whole system that has time as a component of it. So the idea that you took 16 frames and you made a 10-minute piece out of it, that's possible. But to a film editor, they're like,
I'm pretty sure that's what I did. But yeah, there is a possibility that I looped it.
Hey, fascinating story on that. Another thing that kept me away from Artmatic for a long time was that there was no looper. Things would pulse. I found a lot of Artmatic stuff, it'd pulse out and then it would reverse itself. Yeah. And I didn't like that. I'm like, hey, it needs to be continuous.
I don't like that either.
And so I'm sitting next to Eric in October 2019 there in Paris. And I said, Eric, the one thing I hate about your Artmatic is there's no looper. And he goes, of course you could do that. I said, show me where you could just drop in a component and make a continuous series. And he goes, oh, wait a minute. He starts typing away at the code. He goes, there, I just made you a looper. Oh. So I got my wish. It's in the Artmatic.
Is it documented though?
Designer. Oh, that's a whole nother story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the documentation. The good news is I think most of Artmatic is documented. I've got started with 2 folks, and now we've got 5 working to document metasynth CTX. so that, like, I just learned that J inverts the colors in the image synth, and it's not in any menu or in the documentation.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we are pouring over the applications and all the old documentation to make a new definitive metasynth CTX manual, and picking Eric's brain. And but yeah, Artmatic. Yeah, I think most of Artmatic, when I was there next to him and the looper was invented, we also came up with a way of getting Artmatic to spit out all the information from the code into a simple HTML file that then we could do a little bit of touch up and put online in basic HTML. So I think everything in Artmatic is now documented. Don't quote me on that, but I think it is. And the looper's certainly there, and you can now create these systems that in one frame will just run forever and keep morphing. Joe, you've been quiet. We're at our 7 o'clock here on the Pacific Coast. Any questions or thoughts for Gary?
No, I just observing. I'm liking how your music reminds me. I'm listening to what you play, and it reminds me a lot of the stuff I would hear from the Dada music, of the Dada movement of art and music, and even some of the stuff, the more staccato sounds of the keyboard, somehow reminded of the piano solo from David Bowie's Aladdin Sane. It's very nice to hear. It's this musical free form of consciousness that plays well against the visual backdrop that you have with the two softwares, which I think is important. The visual and the sonic, as you say, they're inseparable, and people try to separate them. That speaks volumes of the folly of our old school system. I mean, that's like trying to tell the runner to decide between the left and right leg. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
right,
And so you make excellent points with the connections of the sonic and the visual. I mean, even martial artists and dance instructors will tell their students, find a second form of martial arts or dance to compare to the original art form to. And the art and the music, they're drawn together. They're inseparable. They're like Siamese twins.
Yeah.
For people to try to separate it is ludicrous and very, it says a lot about the critic. In fact, I mean, it should be a no-brainer, but for many it's not.
Well, the really big benefit of the technology is that somebody like me can afford to buy the technology that allows me, I can make DVDs at home. I can make this all by myself. And traditionally, particularly, I mean, if you want to make a film, just run to the end of any film and see how many people are involved in it. And every time you get more than a couple of people involved, they're going to be compromised. They're going to have disagreements, and then they'll reach a compromise that may not be the best choice.
That explains, that kind of explains why you have commercial art, which does so well, and real art, which people don't get and might not do so well. Is like, are you catering to the connoisseur or the consumer?
Yeah, right. Always an issue. But the idea that you can. I mean, one of the reasons I started in electronic music and that kind of media was I have in my garage, I have about 5 orchestra pieces that have never had even the first note sounded, because you have to deal with a conductor and an administration and convince the musicians that, and you can't, you got to pay the musicians to read the music, because they're there and they need to be paid.
You get to wear more hats as a
and then
result.
I looked at artists, canvas, paint, done.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one. They're not these multiple steps of copyists and score and parts, and so. I mean, I've written a fair amount of acoustic music, but nothing really big, nothing orchestral.
I also like how you draw to the art, people who do art for the sake of production versus for creativity, and art that's been as a necessity for evolution, for how we've been able to survive, with agriculture as a great example. I'd also say art, people who are drawn to art as an obsession. They may not want to do art or have to do art, but they need to do art. They must do art. Writers are a great example of that.
Yeah. I think I might be an example of that, although it doesn't make me unhappy.
Hmm.
I mean, it's what I do in life, what I really enjoy in life. I mean, retirement for me is easy because I'm doing the same thing I did when I was teaching, except I now have time to do my own work, hours and hours and hours, where I spent my time administrating and syllabi and grading not papers, but grading projects and things like that. And I could only really work in the summer. You know, like a lot of the old composers. I think about Mahler. Mahler only composed in the summer. He
Oh,
was a conductor mostly. I mean, he only had time to compose in the summer. Yeah.
That's something that it can be quite lost on history and the public,
Yeah.
that famous composers and artists had day jobs.
Right. Yeah, they had
And
to. Yeah.
I run into this ever since I moved to Seattle. I've been encountering this conversation because in the San Francisco Bay Area, everybody just, you work in tech, you work with some big corporation, biotech, something, and you make music, and you play the local clubs and whatnot. In Seattle, there was I think a long history where musicians were working musicians. They were playing clubs. There were a lot of clubs,
Yeah.
and that was if you were playing, you were getting booked gigs, you were authentic. And if
Yeah.
you weren't doing that, you were inauthentic. So there was this real tension here, and still is, leading up into COVID, of this real tension between the two. And it was so strange to me because I'm thinking, well, don't all these other famous people had day jobs, or Mozart had patrons, right?
Yeah.
It's not unusual. It doesn't make your art any less the fact that you have another job.
Charles
Mozart,
Ives sold
getting-
insurance. Charles Ives.
I didn't know.
Yeah. He made a lot of money selling insurance and wrote his. I don't know when he wrote his music, but some of the most interesting and unusual music of the early 20th century.
Or more recently, Philip Glass talks about how he was doing all of his. He had a moving company, and then he was a taxi driver.
Yeah, he was a taxi driver. There's a
Saved up
There's
the
a knock-
money, and then got the ensemble together, and they would go tour
Yeah.
for a week, and then go back to work.
there's a knock
not-
joke about Philip Glass driving the taxi.
Uh-oh.
Or no, I guess it's not. It's a joke. Somebody gets into his cab at Penn Station and is reading newspaper. And every time he looks up, we're passing the same corner.
Ooh, burn on the.
Yeah.
If folks don't know Philip Glass, he's very famous for. I guess Philip Glass is generative, right? He said he based
Yeah.
his stuff on
He wrote
Indian
music for
ragas.
several of the Olympics.
You
He
know,
worked with Godfrey Reggio on a bunch of movies. Godfrey Reggio lives here in Santa Fe, and they were beautiful photography and just great, very minimal music.
Koina
But just wonderful. Koyaanisqatsi, yeah, that was the first one. But he's here. I actually got to go to his 80th birthday a while back. My late wife worked for him. And he has a little production studio here in Santa Fe, and they're always raising money for the next film.
That was a huge impact on certainly any of my generation that was into art film or public consciousness or whatnot. That film was, I think, that movie had a huge impact on folks emotionally.
I think he did about 4 in this series.
And Joe,
And he-
Koyaanisqatsi?
They all had a Scotzi in them, but I can't remember what the exact titles were.
Koyaanisqatsi, yeah. I know I
There's
saw
one
the
with a
first three,
T, one that started with a T.
but the
yeah.
first one
But
really
gorgeous,
was that.
Jorga's photography.
Yes.
And no, it didn't seem it had a particular theme. It was just gorgeous moving images, very high resolution.
The first half of the film was gorgeous images, and then they cut from all these natural images of clouds and fast motion and slow motion,
Yeah.
and they cut to a garbage dump with a bulldozer pushing piles and piles
Oh,
of
yeah.
garbage.
And lots of machines and
And
things
it
like
becomes
that.
focused on machines and then ends up with a rocket exploding.
Oh,
Sounds like Koyaanisqatsi.
Yep. That's
Yeah,
what we're talking
I
about.
got
here.
a balance.
That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, probably late 80s.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, I want to go ahead and wrap up our episode with the.
Yep.
I'm going to call it the bird piece because I cannot pronounce the
Oh,
word
okay.
in French.
It's French. L'oiseau mystique.
L'oiseau
The
mystique.
mysterious birds.
And you hang tight, as even though I'll wrap up the episode, I wanted to chat with you a little bit more.
Okay.
So, folks, we're here with Gary Lee Nelson. Thank you so much for tuning in this week and listening to our interview about art and music and creativity. And just go out there and be creative, and go out there and give yourself time to be creative, and give yourself time to actually absorb a piece of art versus, having a first reaction and moving on. We're a very disposable society. Take some time with things, okay? So here is a piece of Gary's and that I'd like to close out the show with. That was a video by Gary Lee Nelson, and I apologize for the strobe light. I've got to get in there and turn that feature off. So hopefully no one's having trouble with that this episode. Anyhow, so I want to thank you all for watching and listening in on our discussion about art and music. And I don't know why. I talk to artists and musicians all the time, and I don't have a problem with what is art, what is music, and whatnot. But for some reason, I'm concerned about this. I think I'm always thinking about the viewer, and will the viewer like this? Is this a little too out there for the viewer? I do want to tailor the shows in a way that they're digestible, and at the same time, I don't want to just be doing pop music every week. I certainly don't experience music in just a pop context. I listen to all sorts of types of music because of how I feel or what mood or are they good to work to. Some music is very distracting. And we're talking about Philip Glass, and one thing I like about Philip Glass is it's not distraction. It happens. It has a passion. It has a calm. So I find it very great to do work because it, keeps me focused and on task. So if you haven't explored art and music in your life, I just encourage you to. It's one of those things where in the American culture, we could say, oh, this is not a value outside of entertainment. But there's an experience around art that can be very uncomfortable. And a lot of people avoid staring at a painting for 5-10 minutes. And I don't think it's because they're hyperactive. I think that there is a kind of a threat in that, that they may sit long enough that they start discovering themselves. And if you're eating all the time, you can't really speak your true voice. So get out there and just take a deep breath and absorb something that's different. Okay? Enough pontificating for this week. Tune in next week. We'll have another great episode and another completely unexpected genre of artist. You take care. Stay safe out there. If you would like to find out more about my art and music, you can find me on Facebook at KALIB Duarte. That is KALIB DUARTE. I have music on Bandcamp. My country rock folk side is KALIB, KALIB. And my electronic, dark, goth industrial is Audio Terrorist. And a band that I used to have that's more sort of fun, sexy electronic music is Cuirbleu, CUIRBLEU. Check it out on Bandcamp and YouTube. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Ciao.